Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Wright Flyer. As always, this is your captain, Randy Wright speaking, and I'd like to take this opportunity to personally thank each and every one of you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at our state-of-the-art radio program, Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Now, ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, let's go ahead and delve into the topic which I have slated to be the cornerstone of this episode of our program, as I think it's an important one that needs further examination. Namely, what we saw happen over the course of this weekend, particularly the last couple of days, unfurling before the shocked and horrified eyes of anyone dwelling within the free world up there to our neighbor in the great white north of Canada, it would leave us breathless, and it does leave us breathless, because it shows us beyond a shadow of a doubt that Trudeau is ready to essentially assume the mantle of being a dictator. That's what he's wanted this entire time, and he has proven this beyond a shadow of a doubt. But we also need to focus on the fact that the Freedom Convoy of 2022 represents more than COOF restrictions and mask mandates, and that is because the goalposts surrounding the mandates that rest at the heart of this entire issue and the timeline to flatten the curve has been used as a convenient excuse for governments around the world to redefine the social contracts that exist between officials and the people whom they supposedly represent. And what I mean by that is, in a free society, the government is supposed to be limited. We are supposed to have rights that are recognized. For the United States citizen, that would be the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to our shared United States Constitution that lay out the sacrosanct restrictions that government is not allowed to encroach upon our inalienable, fundamental rights. For Canadian citizens, that would happen to be their Charter of Rights. These documents and these applying principles form the bedrock of a functioning society. And they rest at the heart of not only Canada and the United States, but Western civilization. These are the ideals that have been handed down to us for generation after successive generation. And right now what we are seeing is that individuals like Justin Trudeau and various others are just ready, willing, and able to completely deny, to strip, abridge, and alienate these quintessential elements of our culture and society away from people. And it should be a shocking and horrifying thing, because that is not something that government is supposed to do. That is something that the people are supposed to prevent. And I think we're starting to see that. I think we are starting to see that with the way the government in this case has certainly overplayed its hand. And when we look at this, we have to consider just the type of person Justin Trudeau really is. He's the son of a former prime minister, or the alleged son. There's that whole rumor that he could be, Castro, little illegitimate child. But either way, Pierre Trudeau was supposedly his father, and he views this as his excuse to have free reign to do whatever the hell he wants to the people. And this is because he believes that he's smarter than the people, that nobody else can touch him, that he is New Age royalty. And therefore, if you question him, if you dare to have any resistance to anything he has to say, then he hates you. He wants you to be destroyed. And that has always been the case with the left. It's something that is inescapable. It's an inexorable fact that comes to the surface time and again. And it's because they really do view themselves as a new age form of aristocracy or royalty. In fact, I thought it was interesting thinking back on the works of de Tocqueville. Now, de Tocqueville had always said that socialism was a new age form of feudalism. And when you examine the way that these New Age modern socialists are acting. That's certainly the way that they are portraying themselves. It's the way that they are presenting themselves to the people. And that is something that we should resist with every ounce and fiber of our being. Because we did not reach such lofty heights here in the West by being subservient. All throughout our history and all throughout the development of Western culture and civilization, it has been about the development of individual rights, slowly but surely. The Greco-Roman times proved that. All the way up to the modern era, it has been the struggle to create a free society. And to have a free society, you have to have a representative republic. And that's what we have in the United States. In Canada, they have more of a parliamentary democracy, but it's still something where the federal government is to be constrained. Maybe not to the same degree that it is here in the United States, but still, the way in which this government has been acting is just staggering. Staggering. And it shows no signs of improving at any point, at least within the foreseeable future, because Trudeau has doubled down on things. Of course, when the pandemic hit, Trudeau saw this as the golden opportunity of a lifetime to pounce, to set in motion the wheels, to enact his grandiose vision for everything. And so that's exactly what he did. You know, he was quick to pounce on the pandemic, to push forward an agenda which he had dreamed about for a long time. As a member of the World Economic Forum, a kind of shadowy organization that claims to be politically neutral and that it's about promoting entrepreneurialism, it's not. Trudeau wants to reshape our global economy. In a sense, they are looking to instill that new age feudalism, where they can essentially sit at a throne and tell us how to live out the facets of our daily lives. That we are new age peasants, and they are the feudal dreadlords who will reign supreme over us. That's not how this is going to play out, and that's certainly not how we should live. We here in the West have fought against this type of totalitarianism for generations. And that is something that cannot change. We cannot afford to allow that to change. But be that as it may, this is the modus operandi of individuals like Justin Trudeau. And of course, part of it is this whole great reset that they've been talking about time and again. Look at the economic distress and destruction and blight that these lockdowns have wrought, not just in Canada, but here in the United States and all across the world. It has caused small businesses to crumble. You know, when we think back to in Texas, the very early stages of the COVID pandemic, there was that stylist, Shelley Luther. She stood up to the government, and the government backed down. We can, in point, in fact, look to that as a prime example to demonstrate how a government should properly respond to the people moving to the government to petition a redress of grievances, and the wrong way to do it. The right way was in which the Texas Supreme Court shot down the mandates that had been put in place by Judge Clay Jenkins there in Dallas County. And Clay Jenkins is another one of those types who likes to think that he can create a new age form of feudalism in his jurisdiction. And the government backed down. They had to. And that was the right response. It alleviated the tensions and it allowed for things to calm down. Trudeau, on the other hand, being so deeply entrenched in the WEF, felt that he had to do this. Otherwise, he would be the quintessential sacrificial lamb for their agenda. So he doubled down and continues to do so to this very day. And look, the Canadians at first stomached the restrictions that were placed upon them by their government. They viewed it as doing their part to help people. I can understand to a degree why people would feel that way. A civic obligation. And think of the way that the messaging was done originally. The graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the Salivating Legacy Media had praised it off or pushed it off as being a wartime footing. This was a war that we had to win. Even Trump, to a small degree, initially had argued it that way, had framed it that way. But we can now see that there was an ulterior motive by the architects of that message, because it was to create this amorphous pattern, this holding pattern in which normality could not return because governments kept changing definitions. And we know this. The left has always been about changing definitions, and they've been adept at it. Think of Orwell in 1984 and the way that he talked about Big Brother changing terms and meanings on a dime. By doing this, Big Brother could keep the people guessing, as well as being dependent upon the party messaging. Moreover, it allowed the government to have the freedom to change their positions on issues with little rhyme or reason, and to change holistically enemies and allies. Just like that. And we can certainly see the way that it plays out in the stage and reality. Look at how the left has turned on J.K. Rowling. All because she believes in real females or biological females having certain rights and protections that shouldn't apply to transgenders because they're not female. It's not to say that she hates them, but it's taking pride in there being a binary gender. Well, that's changing. The changing definitions and the moving goalposts by the social justice warriors and cancel culture have pushed us to that point. And that's why they could turn on her just like that. It's all part of that. And where that applies here with respect to the way that the vaccination mandates are moving, it's the definition of vaccinated. You know, typically with vaccines, we think of them as being a shield and a variable cure to an ailment. That goes back to the time of Louis Pasteur. Louis Pasteur had created the idea of the vaccine with smallpox and cowpox and pasteurization of milk and these different processes that he developed. It was to inoculate people against the illness and to cure them. So, when one takes a vaccine, one is immunized against getting and spreading whatever illness the vaccine allegedly targets. With the coup, this hasn't been the case. Yet, the leaders that were in power, the political powers that be, they had advertised it to the people as though it were an end-all be-all cure. If you just take this and life can return to normal. But then it started to change. It started to change because then it was the booster phase. Oh, well, look, it's being shown that now all of a sudden the effectiveness of the vaccine, the immunization of the vaccine begins to wane within a month's time or 2 months' time. And by 6 months, it's useless. So you have to keep getting boosters. First 1, then 2, then 3. Or one could be considered fully vaccinated. And so all of a sudden, new terms were being thrown around, fully vaccinated. Then further restrictions and new vaccine passports were added, making once free citizens virtual prisoners within their own country. And of course, slowly but surely, people would become suspicious of the motives of their government. Hey, maybe they haven't been telling us the truth this whole time. Maybe this hasn't really been about promoting public health at all. Well, maybe it wasn't. We see the truckers rose to the challenge. You know, in a modern free society, we have to have ready and free access and rapid access to goods. This means people have to go out onto the road in long, isolated conditions, putting in and charting long hours in near absolute isolation to get goods to us. And, you know, it's ironic, but this is something that Trudeau had first initially recognized and had even sung the praises on Twitter of the truckers, telling people to thank the truckers for keeping the stores stocked, for risking life and limb, as it were, to ensure that society didn't completely collapse. Of course, his tune changed as soon as they rose up in opposition to the most draconian vaccine passport for crossing the border into the U.S. That was a bridge too far for Trudeau. And think about it. It makes sense that it would be. Because for Trudeau, this was someone being ready, willing, and able to stand up against him, to challenge his edicts. And again, when you look at it from his frame of mind, Trudeau has always viewed himself as being something above the people, as being more intelligent than the people. And therefore, if the people were prepared to stand up for him, or to him rather, and if there was a certain insular and discreet group within the people standing up to him, then he would lash out against them. And think about even the way that he framed his initial response to them. He called them racist and misogynist. He attempted to belittle them right from the start, and that was to isolate them. But it also fits his worldview, that he is, lo and behold, superior to anyone and everyone, and this is because of who he was and how he was brought up. And if you challenged him, screw you. That's exactly the way that he presented himself. That's exactly the way he views himself, and that's not going to change. And look, the truckers came to the realization rather rapidly that the vaccine mandate, the passport there at the border, was merely meant to harass them and to be used as a means to abridge their rights as well as the rights and liberties of their fellow Canadians. And indeed, that's exactly what Trudeau has been using this for. That was his end goal all along. That was part of the WEF's plan. And it was for this reason that the convoy originally formed some 4 weeks ago. Now, we see that Trudeau has shown his true colors, first by fleeing the peaceful protest, again attempting to malign anyone who dared have the gall to stand up to him as being some sort of racist or misogynist, as someone that was dangerous, and so he felt that there were threats to him. Yet this has proven to be the most peaceful protest in modern history, practically. That is, until the police were unleashed upon them this weekend. Violence came when Trudeau's thugs were unleashed upon the scene, when all of a sudden, with carte blanche, the Canadian federal government announced that there would be no right to lawful protest. Why? Because they had their own agenda. This is exactly what totalitarians do each and every time. When it comes to this, they will abridge the rights of the people and then point the finger of blame onto the people, projecting their own malice onto the very people that they are supposed to serve and represent. And the police that were there in Ottawa, I don't want to label all of them this way, but the ones that were there, the horse trampling the old woman, and various other protesters breaking into trucks, vandalizing property, they are complicit. They are complicit actors with this, and therefore they are accessories to this wanton crime that the Canadian government is enacting upon its people. And then, of course, How can we ignore the hypocrisy that Justin Trudeau has shown here? Vilifying and demonizing and thereby ultimately dehumanizing his opponents here, as opposed to when Black Lives Matter and Antifa were out during the so-called Summer of Love, the fiery but mostly peaceful protests. He went out and took a knee and gave parley to that group. So we can see that beyond a shadow of a doubt and in no uncertain terms, this has all been political. It is a political narrative that Trudeau has foisted upon the Canadian people. And though he would deny it vehemently and vociferously, the evidence speaks volumes about what's happening here, the way things occurred over this weekend. These protesters have done nothing but be peaceful. They have not destroyed property, as he has attempted to malign them as doing. They have not been rebellious. They have been about peace and love this entire time. And so as this continues, it will show the true colors of the Trudeau regime to the people all across the world. And when it comes time for him to answer for having enacted the Emergency Act, something that is wholly unprecedented in Canadian history, he's going to be unable to do so. And with each escalation that they have pushed here, the only thing that it has resulted in achieving is causing more protests to arise. They're rising in cities, in provinces, all across Canada now. And they don't have the manpower to deal with that. And so that's how it is. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to once again thank you for choosing to fly over the friendly airwaves with us here at the Wright Flyer. I hope to see you again the next time we happen to take off again. Please do take care. See you around.